Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to head over to Öland once again, which is the southernmost of the two large islands off the southeast coast of Sweden, the kind of long skinny one just over the water from Kalmar. And we're going to go to a little place called Rälla on the western side of the island, about halfway up. But that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Fireside Brewery, who have featured on the channel about 6 or 7 times before. And this time we are having a look at their Flamethrower Double IPA. So yeah, this one comes in at 7% ABV, so I guess it is a little bit debatable about whether this is a double IPA. I would always say that, 7.5% is the kind of imperial double sort of border, if you like, but that's that. But yeah, this one is a hazy New England style IPA, and it was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for February of 2021. So yeah, very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. This is the fourth, I think, IPA that I've had from these guys so far. The last beer that I reviewed was their Firestorm, which was their big Imperial Stout, which I thought was really nicely done. And I've also had the Fields of Fire, which is one of the beers in their Öland series, the strawberry wheat beer done using local strawberries. But yeah, this brewery is another one that kind of highlights what I often say about the Swedish craft beer scene. There's 700 breweries in the country these days, and if you try the beers from some of the really small breweries like this, you can find some gems, and I have been impressed with what Fireside have been putting out there so far. Just really, really solid and nice and drinkable beers. So yeah, definitely curious to see how this one turns out. Nice to return to these guys once again, and I do hope that I can actually get out there and have a little look at the brewery and things like that at some stage. We'll see about sorting that for some point in the future. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Fireside Brewery before, and we will no doubt try more beers from these guys in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to the brewery notes then. So Fireside Brewery, as I've told you already, are based in a little place called Rälla on the western side of Öland, about halfway up the island, and it's part of an American barbecue restaurant and brew pub, although I think they had to close the barbecue restaurant recently because of the whole kind of COVID situation. But the company is owned by Joel and Johanna Heineke, and they started brewing beer together back in 2015. But the first brewery was just a very small 160 litre brew kit, and they found that their beer sold much better than they expected, and it was just very difficult for them to keep up, so they've gradually been scaling up. But in 2018, they started adding local ingredients to their beers, such as honey and strawberries, to create the Öland series. And as I mentioned earlier, the Fields of Fire strawberry wheat beer, that's the one beer I've reviewed from the Öland series so far. I'd love to try the honey one, but I've not seen that through Systembolaget actually. So yeah, but over 2019, these guys produced around 25,000 litres of beer, and they expanded the brewery and started selling them through Systembolaget as well. So you can order these beers nationwide now. But recently they had to close their restaurant because, as I say, COVID-19 pandemic, and a lot of people seemed to think it was like a seasonal restaurant as well, actually. So, maybe they need to that might be the thing, is if they're going to have a restaurant, it'd probably be better to put it in Färjestaden, or to put it into put it into the likes of Kalmar or something like that. Maybe that's the way forward for them on the restaurant side of things. But as of February 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, these guys have produced around 45 different kinds of beer, and that number will of course increase. Shame to hear about the barbecue restaurant, because obviously it is nice to have a wee rural restaurant in Öland, but I think it probably just people didn't sort of know about it and things, and again the pandemic is of course going to exacerbate problems, but hopefully they can get that up and running again at some stage. But it seems that the brewery side of the business is doing pretty well actually. So yeah, hopefully, as I say, we can get out to Öland again and maybe do an interview with these guys. That would be very, very cool. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Fireside Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So you've got this usual artwork from Fireside Brewery. I do think it's very nice. I do like the really kind of graphical style that these guys have. But yeah, it is very, very nicely done, I have to say. There you can see, plain black bottle cap on this one. So yeah, it tells you a little bit about the brewery on the side here. Fireside Brewery, Flamethrower is a hazy double IPA with intense flavours of pine, citrus and a variety of tropical fruits, and it's hopped with Amarillo, Mosaic and El Dorado. So we know all of these hops. Amarillo is about 12% alpha acid, one of the original high alpha acid hops, lovely big orangey oily flavours. Mosaic is about 14% alpha acid, about 14% alpha acid, and then a lovely lighter kind of juicy tangerine sort of thing. And El Dorado is a hop that seems to be making a bit of a comeback recently. That's been around for quite a while as well, but that gives you some lovely kind of passion fruity and pineapple-y sort of notes to it. It's a lovely hop, that, and it just, for some reason, it was about for a little while, then it disappeared, and it seems to be coming back in. But there seems to be peaks and troughs with these different things. But this one contains wheat and oats, and also it says milk sugar as well, which will be lactose, I guess. But I thought you actually just, in Swedish, you just said Laktos. So maybe it's something slightly different, not sure. But yeah, 7% ABV, this one. Like I say, I would debate that this is a double IPA. For me, a double IPA is 7.5% and up. So yeah, I think to me, 7.5% is probably the minimum that you can say for a double IPA. So I would pick them up on that, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think you have to go to 8 if you're going to call it a double IPA, to be honest with you. 8, I think, is definitely safe. 7.5 is kind of debatable as well. But regardless, it doesn't really matter as long as the beer tastes good. That's the main thing. But yeah, 330ml bottle. This one, I think I paid like, this probably would have been about 35 or 40 Swedish kroners. Let's go with 40 just to be safe. So yeah, €4 about, €4, maybe £3.50 sterling, and then about $4.50 American for those of you watching in different parts of the world. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So yeah, 7% hazy New England IPA, whatever you want to call it, with some lovely hops in it. And I'll tell you something, you can smell the Mosaic out of this right away. You can really smell that Mosaic. Let's just sugar up the bottom. Is there sediment in here? I think there's a wee bit of sediment at the bottom. Let's just get that up. We're going to get a big head on this thing anyway, so there we are. Yeah, I think, yeah, there was quite a bit of sediment in that, so yeah, we'll let that settle down a wee bit and we'll pour the rest in later if it kind of settles down. But there we go, realigned. So yeah, oh yeah, look. Yeah, you can see at the bottom of the glass there, look at that, little bits of sediment. It's all natural though, all natural, so not a big deal. Yeah, as you can see with this beer, it's poured with a lovely 1.5 fingers of a frothy, I would say that's a cream coloured head. It's not perfect white, doesn't matter though, right enough. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I mean, overall, it looks pretty nice and pretty much as you would expect for a New England IPA. In terms of colour, I would describe this one as a sort of murky, a nice kind of murky dark yellow. And it's got a good level of haze to it. I mean, for a 7%er, I'd say the level of haze on this is quite impressive. So remember, the colour of your beers is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil, the more your sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour. But in the first instance, the type of malt decides the colour for the most part. And the level of haze that you get in these beers depends on the oat and the wheat contents, the ratios of these. But the yeast, I guess, also plays a little bit of a role as well, because your yeast is more influential than you'd think. So yeah, it looks quite nice, I have to say. So in terms of a New England IPA, nothing particularly surprising about this one, but as you can see, quite a wee bit of sediment came out of this one too. Maybe it's just my fridge was maybe a bit too cold or something for the beer. But and of course that is the other thing about it is, you know, Systembolaget are not known for, they always transport things at room temperature, which I don't think is the best. I think when it comes to some of these beers, they should be cooling them down. But yeah, I don't know if that's something they will. I think if they cool them down, it encourages people to drink them on the streets. I think that's why they don't have like fridges and stuff in Systembolaget. But yeah, it's an interesting point. But yeah, it certainly looks the part for a New England IPA. Let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. I'm very, very curious about this beer. Yeah, it comes together really nicely. First impression that I have of this one is that it comes across as being quite white bready and quite yeasty, actually. So, as I've said to you before, in my opinion, when it comes to New England IPAs, there's about 6 different directions you can take these in. They can be sort of yeasty and farmhousey. They can be kind of more barley malt leading and bready, oaty and creamy, wheaty and bitey. They can be more kind of brown sugary. And they can also be a little bit more kind of rye and grainy like as well. This one to me strikes me as being soft and white bready, but also yeasty. So I'm sure we'll get a few more elements out of it the more that we drink of it. So yeah, even when I take the aroma in more deeply, you do get a bit of bitiness from the wheat. Although the thing is, I remember the hazy IPAs I've had from these guys before being more smooth in that sense. They don't do such bitey IPAs. They're more kind of smooth from this brewery. So you do get a wee bit of the wheaty bitiness out of the beer. You've got a lovely kind of soft white bready character to this one, and you can just smell the yeast sort of thickening it up. Actually, the yeast is giving you an almost like floury, fresh bready sort of thing to this beer. You get a little bit of the oats, but it's quite hard to detect the oats in honesty. This beer really is about the bread, the barley malt and the bread. That's really what I'm getting out of this one. So yeah, the aroma on the malty side of this beer is quite nice. Yeah, you do get a wee tiny bit of a kind of Werther's Original brown sugary sort of thing out of the beer, but yeah, the flavour profile out of this beer, or the aroma profile on the malty side of things, I think goes together really nicely. On the green side of the hops, let's have a little look at this then. On the green side of things, I would say it's got a nice big, the first impression of that is that it's a nice big kind of floral note that you're getting out of this one. It's got a little bit of spice to it, but it's really quite deep and aromatic, to be honest with you. There's a little touch of earthiness in there. That would be the Mosaic that's going to give you that. The other 2 hops, from what I remember, they are all 3 of them are 12% plus alpha acid, so you're going to get you are going to get a good little bit of you're going to get a fairly decent floral aromatic note out of these beers, definitely. So yeah, the floral aromatic note in this beer I think comes across really nicely, and it's not too pungent. It actually builds a good bridge. This is one of these beers where all of the different aroma components just seem to blend together quite nicely. So yeah, and the more deeply you take in the aroma, actually you can smell a bit more of the wheat and the oats, definitely. So yeah, on the again, back to the green side of the beer, you do get a nice little bit of zestiness from the grassy qualities there, but quite a deep floral aromatic note, some nice zesty grassiness, and you've also got a good little bit. You also have a good bit of how would you say? You also have quite a bit of my brain's not working. You also have quite a nice bit of, say, of just big soft kind of tropical fruity juice notes on this. I keep getting brain farts in the videos these days. Maybe I'm getting early onset Alzheimer's or something like that. Yeah, but yeah, the fruity side of this beer is quite nice. I think we've covered the green component as much as we need to. But as you'd expect when you've got Mosaic and Amarillo in here, it's very orangey leaning. You can smell the more oily oranges from the Amarillo, and you can smell those lighter tangerines from the Mosaic for sure. But you can smell a bit of a soft kind of tropical note in there. There's some nice mango, there's a little bit of a kind of pineapple-y note in there, and you do get a wee bit more of a slightly pungent, you get a bit more of a kind of pungent passion fruit in there as well. So yeah, it's a very soft and very smooth smelling IPA. Nice deep green component to it with a little touch of zestiness, and then you've got a nice kind of more oily and juicy character coming out of the beer. So yeah, this one I think does fit together rather nicely, I have to say. So yeah, take a little bit of time and ponder over the aroma before you get stuck into it. But we are going to taste this beer now and see how we get on. So yeah, this one is the Flamethrower. A hazy, they call it a double IPA. I would argue it's just a strong IPA from Fireside Brewery in Rälla on Öland over in the southeast of Sweden. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skull, cheers. Yeah, it's really nice how it goes together, that actually. Its first impression is it's quite a, it's kind of smooth, oily sort of thing that you get out of this one. I like the mouthfeel of this. That's the first thing that strikes me about this beer. The mouthfeel is kind of exactly what I would want. So yeah, thumbs up to Fireside for this. I think they've pulled off quite a solid mouthfeel on this beer. Absolutely. But yeah, that is very nice actually. Yeah, again, it's a very, very smooth and just really drinkable New England IPA. This one actually, it's strange because it does feel a bit thicker than the other ones I remember having from them before. It's still got the same smoothness, but this one definitely feels thicker, and I think, to be honest, this one is stronger, so that kind of makes sense. I feel like I'm stating the obvious, but it's again, it's solid, and that's what these guys are doing. They're doing some really very, very solid beers actually. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they progress actually, because they've got the more west coasty leaning IPAs I've been impressed with. The New England ones are solid as well, and their Imperial Stout was nice. I think the thing that's left for them to try is a black IPA. That'll be the next one. That'll be one that they need to have a go at this year actually. I'd love to see what these guys would do with a black IPA, come to think of it. So if Joel and Johanna are watching, please do a black IPA. That would be really nice. But yeah, another just solid beer from these guys. Well done to them for that. I think probably the reason I like this one as much as I do is the orange. As you guys watching the channel for any length of time will know, I'm a sucker for an orangey leaning IPA. So yeah, but anyway, let's break down the flavour of this one then. So straight away across the middle of your palate, you can feel a little bit of that lighter kind of barley malt sort of thing. You get a bit of that soft white bready quality just blanketing the middle of your palate. The yeast is playing a big role in this beer, we'll say that straight away. So on top of the bready notes for me, you can feel quite a bit of yeasty character to this beer. In the very centre of your palate, you will feel a little bit of an oatiness to it as well, and perhaps there's a little touch of a kind of Werther's Original butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of this one, butter candy. You do get a little bit of that, and that'll be the alcohol flavours in the beer that are giving you that, unless they've put a bit of Maris Otter or Golden Promise or Cara Munich or something like that in there, which is possible. But yeah, this beer, it's a bready, yeasty leaning New England IPA for me. If you go to the border region between the middle third and the back third of your palate, you can feel there's a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty element there, which again I quite like. I do like that. Then on the back third of your palate, you can feel that there's a really nice, slightly thicker wheaty component to the beer. You can feel there's a little touch of wheaty bitiness there, but again, the yeast is kind of promoting that. I do feel that this is a fairly yeast-forward New England IPA, but it works for it. It gives the beer a really nice kind of smoothness. So yeah, the thickness of your beer from back to front of your tongue is like this. It kind of thickens up, then it just goes down on the border region. It gets fairly kind of thick going forward, and you get that little bit of sweetness there. So yeah, the malt base is quite straight shooting. Again, this beer doesn't do anything surprising. It's just well crafted, and there's so many New England IPAs and stuff on the market these days that it's quite, it's you have to have a good standard for your brewery to kind of survive in that sense. But it's it's difficult to do anything really kind of crazy and out there. So all you can ask for is well crafted beers, and that's what they've done. Absolutely. So yeah, I feel we've covered the malty side of the beer fairly well. As I say, baseline of kind of soft white bread, yeasty note on top of that, bit of oats, and a wee bit of a kind of butter candy, Werther's Original sort of thing. Bread crust in the border region, wheat on the back third of the palate, then thicker kind of yeasty notes sitting on top of that, actually, and a bit of bitiness. Back of the palate, that's your malt base. Yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. You do get a little bit of that. As you move further forward, the floral aromaticity comes out of the beer just very quickly. It just comes out, you know, straight away. You just move forward a little bit, boom, floral aromaticity. The beer does feel as if it's dry hopped. You can get a little bit of that kind of hoppy, dusty sort of thing on the sides of the palate there, which is usually the telltale sign of dry hopping. But most of the hops in this beer, of course, will be late additions. Remember, when it comes to hopping, if you add the hops early on, that's going to give you more bitterness. That's what they do in West Coast IPAs. But if you add the hops later on in the boil, you've got a progressive trade-off, a gradual trade-off between bitterness in favour of flavour and aroma. And the New England IPAs tend to be more leaning towards the heavy late addition hops. So yeah. In that sense, this one is definitely, there's quite a bit of dry hopping in here, and it's definitely late addition hops within the last half for, usually it's about a 90-minute boil, I think, between a 70 and 90-minute boil for a New England IPA. But yeah, in terms of the, how would you say, in terms of the green side of the beer, again, you get a nice big, quite deep floral aromatic note to this one. It's definitely not spicy. It is just quite, you know, deep in that sense. I wouldn't describe it as piney either. It's definitely big and floral. But then round the front curve of the palate, it's got a very nice lighter grassy sort of thing. It's a wee bit zesty as well. But then, yeah, I think that's the green component. For me, the green component leans towards that more floral aromatic side of things. But yeah, on the front third of your palate, as I always say, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So if you go to that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, there is a little bit of a more kind of bread crusty sort of thing there again. Then the base layer underneath the fruity side of the beer is you know, sort of a very, you know, kind of wheaty, white bready, yeasty kind of thing. It's a bit like that. Yeah, probably more white bready and slightly yeasty, I think. That's fair to say. So yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you get a wee bit of the passion fruit, you get a bit of a mango-y note, you can get a wee bit of pineapple in there as well, for sure. That's the Eldorado. But the front half of that front third of your palate is all about the oranges. You've got the more oily Amarillo sitting underneath, and then you get more of the mosaic kind of sits on top of it. You get that brighter, slightly juicier tangerine note just sitting on top of it. So all three of the hops, I think, in this beer are kind of coming across really nicely, and I think the tropical notes actually start to come out of the beer a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. They are noticeable in the beginning, but I think the oily orange lingers there, but I think the tropical fruits just start to jump out a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste of the beer. So yeah, I do like how I certainly like how this one goes together. So yeah, this one, I think, is a solid New England IPA. It's another really nice beer from these guys. Maybe my favourite hazy one that I've had from them so far. The only thing I would say is that it's not a double IPA. 7% is not a double IPA, but that is me nitpicking. Mouthfeel wise, as I said, this is a very, I would describe this beer, where would we put it? Kind of bottom end of full bodied maybe? Yeah, bottom end of full bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth on this one. This beer has a really nice oily character to it. I think it does have a really, really nice oily character to it. Yeah, and I think that's, I enjoy a slightly more oily New England IPA, but I mean, it kind of just depends in the mood, you know. It can be just whatever mood you're in from day to day. But I think probably the Amarillo is a lot to do with the mouthfeel that this beer has, and probably the mosaic as well. So I think I like the slightly more oily mouthfeel that this beer has, and it's not like madly oily. It's just a bit more oily compared to other New England IPAs. I'll say that kind of clearly. But on the on the hoppy bitterness side of things, you know, this is probably about a 20-25 IBU New England IPA. Not a lot of bitterness to this one. I don't think, but again, I'll say this and I'll get it wrong. Do they not usually say the IBUs on these beers? If I remember rightly, they do. Oh, it doesn't, no. I thought Fireside always put that on their beers, but anyway. So yeah, I think this is a fairly low IBA, IBU New England IPA. But remember, this is my weakest part of beer review, and I always put wrong guesses in when it comes to IBUs. But yeah, it's got a lovely soft bitterness to it. The malt base and yeasty notes, as I say, have got a nice smoothness but slight thickness to them. Then, pardon me, you've got some really nice kind of juicy, fruity characters coming out of the beer as well. I think this is a really, really nicely done New England IPA, to be honest with you. So yeah, well done. Thumbs up to Fireside Brewery once again. But I'm not surprised on the basis of the other beers that I've had from these guys. Their brewery's going to do very well when they eventually do sort of scale up a little bit. I think they're still relatively unknown, to be honest. It's a bit of a shame because their beers are pretty good. So I would encourage them to get a slightly stronger presence in the likes of Kalmar and then kind of go from there, because their beers are pretty good. You know, get your beers into Färjestad and Kalmar a little bit more, build a bit of awareness and go for it, because I think they've got a solid base to go forward here. So yeah, as I say, another reason to check out the very small Swedish breweries, Fireside Brewery in my mind. So yeah, this was another solid one from them. I've enjoyed reviewing this. I always enjoyed their beers, to be honest. As I say, very solid quality. But let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Fireside Brewery. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. But in the meantime, this one was the Flamethrower. I nearly forgot the name of it there. The Flamethrower, a hazy double IPA. They're saying, I think just regular New England IPA, 7% ABV from Fireside Brewery in Rälla on Öland over in the southeast of Sweden. Slange, skull, cheers, and I'll catch you guys in the next review.